All right, welcome to the Players Podcast. We have my little brother Tim
Cute.
on the pod again. We're gonna be talking AAU a little bit, so I'm gonna have him ask some questions that I probably wouldn't think about myself, but maybe people outside would. So Tim, let us hear a little something. What you think?
Okay. Younger brother, I got to clarify that before we get into the topic because I'm definitely taller than you. But more importantly, the question about AAU, and I think one of the questions that people are definitely going to have is what's your thought process for someone who makes your team, and what's your process for someone who doesn't make the team? What are your what are you working through when it comes to that?
Yeah, I'm a little different because I'm a trainer first. Like, I have my facility and I'm training. So usually the guys on my team are kids that train with me. And then sometimes there's kids who are, let's say, good enough to make the team, but the AAU environment isn't the best for their development. So if being on an AAU team and just being happy you made this particular team isn't going to grow you as much as doing training or doing one of my leagues and things like that, I pretty much tell the parents, like, I don't think it's for that kid's best interest to be in AAU because if he's going to be a kid that's eighth, ninth on the bench, rarely playing, at the end of the day, AAU's about winning. You try to make it about development as much as possible, but at the end of the day, to continue to have buy-in, you need to win games. So what happens is the kid doesn't play as much. He's not using the things that he's taught because the focus is still a competitive environment. Whereas in my leagues, it's not as competitive. Well, they compete, but I guess the point is they're allowed to play through their mistakes because winning isn't as high on the priority list as developing is. So there's some kids that didn't make my team that could have, just because I think it's a better fit to take this other way of training and getting better.
Okay. So it sounds like you just have the kids' long-term interests in mind. Um, how do you feel about this? We were talking about this earlier, but like being a trainer or being an AAU coach is kind of like being a car maintenance guy. Like if you know vehicles, then you can go up there and they won't scam you. But if you don't know vehicles, you're at the mercy of them saying, "Hey man, like you got to get this and this changed. Otherwise, your car's not going to last." Like if you don't know cars, those are some of the most intimidating situations. How do you feel like the average parent approaches AAU, I guess?
Well, some parents may be smart about it. It's just there's so few options, so you're just stuck with three bad decisions. And so that's one thing, but usually what happens is, people are good speaking and they make promises they can't keep. And so that might be something for a different day to really kind of go down the list of things to look out for when you're choosing an AAU team. But yeah, that's what it is. And you want people to be honest with you, but usually what happens is since the kid ends up making a lot of decisions, I don't want to go there, I want to go here. It's tough to be honest because, well, it's not tough to be honest. I'm always honest with them, but it's tough for parents to make the right decision when they're allowing the kid to decide what they want. And at the end of the day, kids make bad decisions all the time for wrong reasons. I want to play on this team because my friend plays on it. It's a bad reason, especially if you have goals. So yeah, that's how I would look at it. Is you first need to make sure that you look and make sure this team is developing your kid, especially if he's in the younger ages. I mean, that's really all that matters if you want basketball to be fun.
Yeah. How often do you find yourself asking what a parent's goals are or a child's goals are when it comes to like AAU making the team or not?
I ask it a lot, but the issue I run into is they aren't really willing to commit to their commitments. They say they want these. I want to be a better defensive player, but then you don't want to work hard. That's impossible.
Mhm.
I want to be a better shooter, but I only want to shoot when I want to shoot, and I spend more time on 2K than I do, on an actual court. So I end up asking them their goals, but usually this is what I ask. What's their long-term goals with basketball? Oh, my kid wants to play at college.
Mhm.
Okay, well, is your kid willing to be bored? Because that's what it takes. The person who's willing to be the most bored and get in the most reps is the person who's going to end up being the best. And most people don't understand the commitment that comes with what they want, and because of that, that's what they end up sacrificing is
Yeah.
what they want.
So as a coach, how do you like, because I think it's a coach question. A trainer question is a completely different question. But as a coach question, how do you combat that mindset when it comes to producing a team that is consistently able to outwork another team? Because everyone wants to win, but what it takes to do that is usually the stuff that people are disconnected on.
Yeah, you try to get buy-in. What it takes. So this past year, we had 6 kids that went on to play basketball beyond high school, out of our gym, out of the seniors that were there.
Mhm.
And pretty much all 6 parents were like superstar parents. Like they're like, look, I don't know much about basketball. You do. I'm gonna listen to you, follow your lead, and this is how we're gonna do it. So it's really not really a conversation. It's really having the parents that are willing to focus on their kids' goals versus their kids' feelings. And that becomes very difficult for a lot of parents because the kid
Huh.
thinks he knows what he wants and he doesn't know how to get there. But when you're a kid, you know everything. But what parents really have to do is just ignore your kids and just focus on their goals and not, yeah, focus on their goals
Yeah. That
and not their feelings.
that sounds bad, but it's really interesting because parents already know this. Like if you left the diet of your children to them, they would destroy themselves. Even though most kids' goals is to be big, tall, and strong when they're little. And
Right.
it's like funny because it's like, and it's the exact same idea when it comes to basketball. Is like, oh, this is just a matter of nutrition or a matter of what are we willing to do to get where we want. And so as a parent, you know that cotton candy is not going to be a diet for a 4-year old. But as a parent, it's much more difficult to say, dang, who matters? And what in basketball is the cotton candy? What in basketball is the nonsense? And what in basketball is the good protein that we should be getting in our kids?
I
How do
call
you
bad
decide?
trainers. I call bad trainers and bad coaches the fun uncle. Everybody knows the fun uncle.
Right.
Fun uncle is you're telling your kid, "Hey, I want you to be big, strong, and healthy. So we're gonna eat our protein. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get good sleep." And the fun uncle's like, "Man, we don't gotta do that. We could eat ice cream sometimes, and we could go here." That's the fun uncle.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's like parents don't think that your kid is gonna choose the fun uncle every time,
Yeah.
not the uncle that's gonna get him to where he needs to go. So that's usually what you have to overcome. It's really parents doing what they know is right. They come to one training session where it's discipline and your kid is maybe struggling and maybe he doesn't like it, but it's going to grow your kid once you teach him to do hard things. And then he goes to another session where they're just running up and down, not thinking, just balling. And it's
Yeah.
up to the parent to say, okay, one is obviously better than the other, but it just sometimes it's just difficult for them to make that decision because they look their sad kid in the eyes every day and they just can't let them be sad. And so they're basically just like they end up reaping the repercussions of not focusing on what the kid actually loved and his goals. And if
Yeah.
you just commit through it for a year or two, that kid will be playing, he'll get playing time and things like that. But since he chose fun in a
Yeah.
very competitive sport, it doesn't end that way.
Yeah, now that's a really good point. And the fact that you even made that a point and to begin with is something I don't think people hear often. Because usually the question is if you want to make it to the league, then the kid has to work hard, the kid has to grind, and all of those things are generally true. But a kid is really at the mercy of the wisdom of their parents in a lot of ways. Because
Mhm.
while a parent might not know basketball, they can still see what is making sense and what isn't. While the kids in the back seat saying, What's wrong with Uncle Aaron?" Like, and that's what it becomes really
Yeah.
easily. So I think that's a really good point that like parents play a bigger role in where their kids go than I think. I think the parents just think if I get them to a place with hoops, then they'll become the best version of themselves. And that's not true of almost anything else in life. Is if you just get them to a door that says basketball, then yeah, they're gonna make it.
Well, the last podcast we talked about defining things. What is fun?
Hmm.
To me, winning is fun.
Right.
Scoring is fun. Like locking somebody down on defense is fun. And what ends up happening is the kids decide, let's say in the summer, that oh, I'm just gonna play with my buddy because we're really good friends. And your
Hmm.
kid, your buddy doesn't have work ethic. You know, he spends more time on the PlayStation than he does outside. And you choose that team because you think in the fall, all everything, because we're friends, this is all gonna come together and it's gonna work out. And it just doesn't. It doesn't end that way. So like kids have to or parents have to understand that all these things, hard work discipline allows you to have freedom.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is if if I want to go to Europe, hey, I'm going to budget, I'm going to save my money, I'm going to do all the necessary things so I can go to Europe. That discipline to budget allows me to go to Europe. If I don't discipline myself, I got to stay right here in Texas. I don't have any money to leave. And so
Yeah.
like as kids get better at basketball and discipline themselves, they have the freedom to start doing things outside of the rules. And that makes the game more fun. How
Yeah.
come such and such gets to fade away? It's because such and such makes 300 fadeaways every day.
Right.
You know, he's disciplined himself to do that. And he's always on balance, even when he does that. And you're not willing to discipline yourself to do it. And so that's the discipline part of that is what I think parents should be seeking in sports.
Yeah. That's another thing we brought up in the last one too, is like how basketball relates to life, and that connection is why a
Mhm.
parent is better at knowing what's good and what's not for their kid because they've lived more life. Because it really is true. You have to decide in life if you want to be broke and free, because people who don't have jobs or responsibilities, they're free to do whatever they want. They're just
Right.
too broke to do anything that matters. And
Mhm.
then there's people who have money. And it's like those people have responsibilities that keep them in places. And so the question isn't, can I be rich and free? I mean, I'm sure that's a level at some point, but the question is, are you willing to have fun now so that you don't win a game, which isn't fun? Or do you want to not have fun now so that winning can be fun and you can go on farther? Like it's a real question of what's your goals, because your actions are choosing them, regardless what you say.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, kids do a lot of things. They run away from adversity, so they'll go to the fast, really good team that's pressing everybody, where you're not necessarily learning a skill, and then they're winning, and that feels good.
Hmm.
But then you haven't acquired any skill. So now when it's time for you individually to make a team, and the kids get to a level where everybody can dribble and handle the ball, now you can't turn people over and win games that way. Now they're like, man, you used to be so good. It's like, no, it's not that you used to be so good. You
Right.
never got any better.
Yeah.
And that kid who was struggling dealing with the press got
Hmm.
so many reps at doing that. Now he's the point guard on your team because, hey, he failed when it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And now it's time for you to make the team. And now you're failing at, you know, maintaining a roster spot.
Yeah. When we talk about competing with yourself too, that's a huge deal, because it's like if a person just looks at their pool, kind of like we talked about last time, and says, I'm the best one here, that's one thing. But if you just made up one person on an island somewhere else in another state that's thinking exactly what you are. It's like y'all are going to meet one day. Y'all are going to go
Yeah.
to the same college and fight for a spot. Y'all are going to be on different teams in college, and he's going to be the person you got to guard. Like if you think about that mystery person, whoever he is, he exists. He's a real person. There's someone
Yeah.
out there in another state that wants to play basketball too. I promise. And it's like,
Hey, most people compete with what they can see,
mhm,
and imagination is left kids. That's a whole nother topic. But you, imagination is good. It's good to imagine that kid in Europe, Australia, that's still working, and it fuels you to work even harder. Because man, I'm telling you, I mean, I played overseas. We had a guy that could really shoot it, and then I started asking his routine, and he was like, "Yeah, me and my brothers went out and we made 500 shots every day." And I was just like, man, wish I was, you know, focused like that. And I mean, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. The difference is that on my part, I was ignorant. I didn't know anybody was working that hard. I didn't know there was a guy making 500 shots a day.
mhm,
Um, but then you have, you know, a trainer or a good trainer that's telling you to make it. Now Now that you have the information, but you're not using it, now it's stupidity.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure the reason you fail, I'm okay to fail because of ignorance. I just can't fail because of stupidity, because I know there's people working this way. So my imagination has to carry over and bridge the gap that I'm not considering or thinking about.
Yeah. 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 No, that's definitely true. Definitely. What is one of the reasons why parents sometimes might end up leaving your program?
It's for different reasons. A dad might leave the program because of familiarity. So they're not used to this. They're like, "Hold on, my coach used to cuss me out and yell at me, and that's the only way that they know. Like, if you're not doing that, then you're not working." And it's kind of like relationships. If you grew up in a bad home where there's drinking and you don't get to see love and there's arguing, and then all of a sudden you're in a relationship where there is love, and then you get bored
Hmm.
because there's no chaos going on, and you're just like, well, this isn't it. You're like, no, this is actually how love looks.
Right.
But they're not used to it. So like when you start running a practice and you're conducting it and holding kids accountable, but you're not screaming and yelling to do it, like dad's like, man, this ain't it. His tongue's not dragging the ground like when I played, and they played maximum JV, but that's what they're used to. That's what they're familiar with.
Yeah.
And so that's why a dad sometimes leave. Moms, it's usually because they'll put the kids' feelings in front of the kids' goals. And the kid kind of dictates which sessions he's going to come to. I get it. You're a mom. I needed that from my mom. I needed that balance. Our dad was a really no nonsense guy, and hey, you need to do this. And mom was kind of that balance of, all right, well, did you try your hardest? And there's just a difference, and I think that balance is good. But that's what the moms and the kids, they aren't used to what real work looks like. So like what happens is kids watch basketball and they watch on YouTube, they watch the 10-minute game. So they see when Steph Curry or Luca make the shot, and that's it. They just see the clip. They don't see how they got open or how they use their footwork to get their shot off. So when they come into the gym and I'm teaching them how to come off screens, off ball, or how to curl and read, they don't relate that to what they just saw Steph Curry do, because all they saw was the result. They didn't see the work before the result. So since they don't notice it, that's the reason they get bored and leave, because they're like, this doesn't look like what I just saw on that ESPN highlight. And so they value different things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because it feels like basketball. I mean, basketball is just a super, super saturated sport, but it also feels like people don't make the connection at how skilled a game this is because it's so
Mm,
saturated with freak athletes at different levels. Because what a freak athlete is changes. Like when you're in the fourth grade, that's just the kid that's the tallest.
right.
Like by the time you're in middle school, that's who hits puberty first. And by the time you're in college and pro, like the definition changes drastically. But it's like all of those people are just the exceptions to the rule. Like basketball is still made up of skilled players that
Yeah.
know what they're doing. And I don't think people know that between watching the superstars and watching the role players that they don't understand the role they're playing because nobody values it.
Well, one, they never get to see the work that they put in to know what they did to get there. So they don't relate. They don't see the unseen hours. A lot of people, what happens, like even when I played, I remember I came to the gym, and you kind of know this story where the guy was like, "Man, Juwan, you a wasted talent." We are out there kind of going at it in the gym. It's like wasted talent. Like, man, if I had your talent, I'd be in the league. And I'm like, man, you think I just woke up like this? Like I work to be as good as I am. I just went to school for free.
Right.
Like I didn't waste my talent. I have a whole degree and I don't pay student loans. But what happens is when you go through it with people, you can relate. There's a guy named Trey Johnson who was in the G League with me, and he got up at 5 when I got up at 5. We got up our shots together. We did all this work, and the Cleveland Cavaliers called him up, and I was just happy for him because I was along with the ride. I got to see the work, the hours that were put in. So I was just happy for him. They needed a 6'6" guard. I wasn't it. They took him. I was like, man, you earned that. And you can appreciate it once you know what work looks like. And I think a lot of people that don't really know what work looks like, they just think that that you got lucky. And it's like, no, I
Yeah.
earned this.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it's like anybody who makes it has a certain amount of luck. They just don't know the ratio of like oh nah, in order to get lucky, you still gotta be like in order to even get lucky, you have to be a hard worker. Yeah. So I wish this were possible. I wish that we could take the sixth men from every level and then just let them play a level down and watch what happens. Because I think when we watch people go up, we forget what happens to them. Like people who were dominating in high school just kind of fall off and nobody follows it. Nobody realizes why. But it's like when you see the people who make it at each level, if you took the sixth men off of the Cavs, he would be a problem in college. Like, and if you took the sixth man out of college, he would dominate high school. It's like we don't realize because everyone's competing at that next level, we don't see the gaps between the levels. And I think that's what
Mhm.
people think is I could do what he's doing. And it's like, yeah, first of all, you don't realize how short you are if you stood on that court because everyone looks the same height. Like
Right.
there's just levels that I think people miss
Uh,
because we're competing at certain tiers.
right. No, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So no, and this has been good. I like kind of thinking through why things happen, how people think it's good to reflect. Um like, just back and forth. But I really want, if there's one thing I took in my head in this podcast and our discussion is imagination. I wish we could bring the imagination back. And sometimes as a trainer, I step back a little bit so the kids would have to think through, hey, these first 10 minutes, you guys create your own drill. Cause I'm always telling them what to do and they don't know how to get better when I'm not in the gym. When I'm in a game and coaching, I'm like, hey, there's 4 minutes left. Let's see how y'all manage, how many possessions y'all keep, how y'all control the pace. And sometimes I just need to sit back and see what they can do. And it's going to take imagination. It's going to take them thinking for themselves. And so every player that's listening out there, make sure you start thinking for yourself. And then that's going to grow your game. You'll be surprised if you start doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
huge.
yeah. All right. Thanks again, Tim. Hey, till next time, man.
All right. Peace.
Later.